With Crash Bandicoot's comeback as been revealed this year at E3 and the recent trailer of the original remastered trilogy, I was thinking that it would be a good time to look back at Crash's game, so-called Crash of the Titan. It was an attempt to bring Crash Bandicoot in a new direction. It was followed by a sequel, Crash Mind Over Mutant, of which was a game trying to further develop this new formula for the Crash franchise to take. The reception of these games around the internet is mostly negative. While the critics on average gave it a decent rating, for example in Metacritic the PS2 version got an average rating of 70. But let's not forget that the Xbox 360 version got a 65 and the Wii version got a 69. However, it is worth to note that Metacritic is going by criticism from groups of people that are rather popular, like IGN and GameSpot. So in other words, Metacritic is about making an average rating out of the opinions of IGN, GameSpot, game trailers, and all those others. And so yeah, not every individual can affect the overall average rating. I and many others find this to be a major problem, of which is why people like me struggles to be able to taking these scores seriously. Especially when groups of people like IGN gives games a higher rating if they get their cash that they are seeking for from the developers. The average Crash fan finds these games god-awful terrible, and it all started with this game, Crash of the Titans. They think these games are an insult to the franchise and takes away everything that made Crash good to begin with. And that this whole new direction different companies made an attempt to give Crash was unneeded and flat out full of stupidity, and that Naughty Dog should have still owned the right to the Crash brand because these companies, according to them, has no clue of what they are even doing. That was the Crash fans' reaction back in a time before Activision confirmed a new Crash game after Mind Over Mutant. So the fans are rather calm in the current state with how Activision is treating the Crash franchise at the moment, which I find to be interesting. It also makes me wonder if history will repeat itself where the fans goes up against Activision again if the remasters does not play enough like the originals or something like that. If you know me, you would know that I have been critical towards the Sonic fans because I know there are people out there that would shit on the newer Sonic games regardless of quality just because they don't play 100% like the classics. I'm willing to see if these games truly deserves all the hatred they have achieved from the majority of the fans. Starting off in the title logo, already the game comes off as underwhelming to me. Presentation wise, it looks generic. The title scene does not give me a major impact like, "Whoa, here's the game, dude!" It's more like, "Here's the game, I guess." And the lame music theme doesn't help. I know it is weird that I'm already being critical as we are on the title logo itself, but I just feel this way, so that is why I wanted to get that out there. However, I do believe that the intro sequence for the game, of which shows off the game, was well done and keeps me thrilled enough to wanting to get into the game itself. But you can only get to watch it if you wait a couple of minutes in this thing. Yay! The redesigns I don't think looks horrible in their own strengths. I do also find that giving Crash a tattoo makes sense as it represents the wacky attitude of him. Or at least I feel that way. Crunch does look a bit off in his face for being considered a strong individual, and Kokos's mouth does kind of look like a squirrel with a nut in its mouth, which comes off as awkward. But besides these minor complaints, I personally don't have any major issue with these redesigns. A lot of people, however, doesn't like them, which is not surprising as it is a drastic change that makes what old Crash fans grew up with and got used to look like something entirely else. In my opinion, there should be no problem with giving characters a redesign if they are willing to give the series a new direction. However, the fact that this game cannot decide if it is a reboot or not is what in the end causes these redesigns to feel unnecessary. From a presentation standpoint, the game seems and feels like a reboot as the world looks very much different with its overall new settings and sceneries. But it did not stop the writers from doing references that is referring to things that happened in the previous games. It feels more awkward than funny, followed by the fact that the characters has not changed much, and it leaves little to no reason as to why these redesigns were even made to begin with because of that. It's like the Sonic Boom redesigns. Sure, there could be a reason for these redesigns on paper, but nothing especially new or spectacular changed with the characters to make it feel like these redesigns truly paid off. I could not help but to feel like this game truly has no clear vision of which direction it will be taking the Crash franchise to, making the game feel rather blurry, and from there it makes you question things like just who this game was meant for, retro Crash fan or non-retro Crash fan. I will not spend a whole lot of time talking about the story as it goes by your traditional route in storytelling in platformers. A bit of a plot twist in the middle by replacing the main villain with a different kind of villain, but that is about it. The dialogue and overall jokes are not even that funny or interesting. Sometimes the dialogue and jokes comes off as an annoyance rather than entertainment. Here is some scenarios for you on the dialogue.
Cortex, why do you keep doing stuff like this?
Well, actually, it's pretty fun. You should try it. You know, riding around in huge rumbling machines and whatnot. Very stimulating.
I want Wumpa Island smashed flat. Your hair is dumb! Oh, shut her up.
And I shall call this robot the Doominator!
Yeah! That name sucks!
Do I need to say anything? The way the writers treated the dialogue here feels like it was something made for 4-year-olds. I get that this game might have wanted to aim for the younger audience because this was, after all,
a new direction for the Crash series, and a reboot of some sort.
The kids will grow up with this, look back, and most likely will not find it funny. It's this kind of comedy that I categorize as, "Oh, you're a kid, you're stupid, now laugh, laugh damn it, you stupid shit." Oh, of course it will be funny. Kids love stupid things. They laugh at stupid things like fart sounds because they're stupid. They're kids, that's why they're stupid. I am so tired when writers treats kids like they're dumb and like they can laugh at anything. I find this insulting and I'm honestly getting sick and tired of this. I don't appreciate this kind of comedy at all. Now, personally, I don't find this to be like the worst thing ever, but just when I thought that it couldn't screw it up more than this, I got slapped in the face with a middle finger. You know Tiny the Tiger from the old Crash games? Well, if you don't, it's okay. He was this badass that battled against Crash and had a very cruel attitude towards him. Again, if the series is willing to take a new direction with the designs, they might as well change a character like Tiny the Tiger indeed to make it feel like the redesign truly paid off or meant something. Change can be good, but it can also be horrible. It all depends on the overall execution on things. Just have a listen to this.
Crash, I really am cross with you. I'm just trying to do my job, and you go and cause all this chaos. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to eat your face.
Just eat my ears, please.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. I wish some sort of reconciliation was possible here. And frankly, I'm still mad about the last game. You didn't even invite me. That really hurt. You're just too stupendous and fantabulous. Honestly, you're just awesome.
Look, I get that they perhaps wanted him to be that strong yet dumb character, but good God, who on earth likes that voice? Last time I checked, I found nobody that liked it. Everyone gets annoyed by it from what I'm aware of. On top of that, he's not even stupid in a funny way, just in a very annoying way. Instead. Now into that gameplay. The game is a linear platformer where the camera is always facing forward. You can move the camera in the slightest to right or left, but that is about it. The player is barely given the option to move the camera more freely than that. Sure, most of the time you will find yourself not needing to do that because of the level structures, but I did find myself in certain situations where a better camera could have become useful. There were times when the enemies were hiding behind the camera. This can especially be problematic when you are dealing with a bunch of enemies. It especially gets cheap when they decide to do big attacks that you have little reaction time towards, as the camera is stopping you from being able to react to all those attacks properly. So the camera is kind of an issue. The game should have let you move the camera, or in the very least let you turn it around in 180 degree, as even that would have made the game have less frustration. If Crash to Insanity did it, I see no reason to why they would go back to the roots of the old games with their cameras. Unless they are trying to appeal to the old fans, and if so, I think you can tell by this point that they are not doing that so well in my opinion. Even camera aside, the combat feels very unfluid and clunky. You have your standard free punching attack towards your enemies that you trigger by pressing the attack button 3 times in a row. You can charge up a kick-like attack to do rather proper damage towards your enemies, and you have your spinning that has a time limit. You can use Aku Aku as your protective shield in battles. Then you can use this power-up of some sort that allows you to beat down your enemy with one kick. All this may sound well and good, however the attack takes over your controls, meaning that once you trigger an attack and you just notice that you're about to get hit, you're likely to be not able to avoid that hit. Sure, you can do certain fancy like attacks with Crash, but all of them struggles with the same issue, that they don't allow Crash to move properly as he is doing them. It is hard not to get hit in this game as the combat has little in-depth and gives you little to work with because of that. This especially applies to when you are using the mutants. Yeah, the mutants does not add any depth to the combat either. They have their standard attacks that goes with the free punching attack method in terms of functionality, just like Crash's. Admittedly, some mutants shoot from their fists, and others uses their horns. But despite these visual differences, there's no depth in the combat either way. Then they have their most powerful attack that they can trigger when their energy bar is fully charged. There's also a charge-like attack that gives pretty decent damage to your target. As stated earlier, it is hard to not get hit because of these simplistic combat controls. Moving around the arena and jump about seem to be the only alternative you have to avoid attacks. Other than that, you're left with no other choice but to get hit many times throughout your playthrough, and keep repeating the cycle of attack, run, attack, run. It's very repetitive after some while because of how it is just not fun. So of course you're just gonna get hit at the end of the day. That one issue that you can only avoid attacks by running away from your target or targets for a bit would not have existed or caused trouble if the combat had more in-depth, as that would have allowed you to be able to approach things rather fluid. I found myself using the mutants' most powerful attack the most, as I found myself wasting my time by keep pressing square almost throughout my whole playthrough. Even combat aside, the mutants does not add any in-depth into the game overall. You cannot platform with the mutants as they cannot jump, and their backstory also is not all that amusing. Again, no depth. There's so many times you will find yourself needing to leave your mutant and move on playing as Crash without a mutant, because of the fact that there are many sequences in this game where you'll need to platform about, and considering that the mutants cannot jump, well, you'll have to leave them. Throughout the game it is required many times to defeat all the enemies on screen, so considering it is the large focus and it is not executed well, it truly dulls down the experience. In other words, it takes away a lot of the players' interest to continue playing. So that is why I think spending a lot of time talking about it was necessary to prove a point, especially when it is the biggest flaw I had with the game. Ignoring the combat, even the platforming feels bland. It feels like your usual jump from point A to B. It's all basic platforming, the kind of platforming you have seen thousands of times. The way these developers made the platforming in this game is nothing new at all, making it not unique. Therefore it is bland and generic. Sometimes the developers just threw in floaty platforms that is in thin air, which gives me the idea that they had no real vision on how to handle the platforming in this game. The graphics are pretty good for a PlayStation 2 game. For a Wii game it looks fairly good. As for a Xbox 360 game, despite its upscale, it still does not look all that impressive, as the textures and shadering in a 360 can offer far more. The music in this game is overall passable, in other words, meh. But some tunes are catchy and give some kind of Crash-like attitude. And those truly stands out in my opinion. On top of all of this game is just boring more than anything. It is not unplayable, just dull and boring. There's really no interesting origin of the mutants, and the platforming is nothing special. The combat is dull, and overall these redesigns felt unneeded, as nothing has spectacularly changed for the better in the gameplay aspect of Crash, followed by the world it takes part in. And overall, I see no reason to why I or anyone would want to go back to this game for that matter after beating it in one playthrough. Sure, you can defeat all of the 3 spy bots that are hidden in each level, but they are not that hard to find considering the linear level design, and it overall doesn't feel like it pays off. The costumes might do certain changes in the gameplay itself that you can unlock, but honestly, I could not even bother as this game was just so painfully boring. And the funny thing is that some people manages to find most of the spy bots in this game in their first playthrough. Wow. Even when I was playing this game in multiplayer mode with my sister, it was still boring. The Uka Uka boss on level 12 were very cheap with how there were a bunch of enemies, and because of the lack of depth with the combat I got killed many times at these parts of the game. Now to answer the main question of this video. Well, first off, I would like to make it very clear that I would by no means ever consider Crash to Titan a god-awful experience. Unlike games like Ice Climber, the controls and overall game mechanics works fine enough for you to be able to beat the game. For someone like me to truly consider a game bad, it has to be poorly made to a point where it's frustrating due to the wrong reasons. So saying this game is bad is naturally subjective from a technical regard. While the Uka Uka boss and level 12 were very cheap, there were only 2 out of all the 20 levels in the game. The rest ranged to mediocre. Not bad, just mediocre. Despite the big drama the fans has had with the characters' new appearances and the way the world now looks to Crash, all the characters still very much stays with how they were before. Not Tiny the Tiger for sure, and Uka Uka has also got more childish, but that is about it. I find it childish when people say the reason to why these 2 games are very flawed is because of the redesigns alone. Sure, they were not needed, but it's not like the character designs affects in some way the overall quality in the game. It would be like me saying that the Sonic Boom franchise was doomed because Sonic has blue arms in it. Not only do you look crazy when you say it, but you'll make it hard for people to take you seriously. So to answer to the question if this game deserved most of the hatred it got, I would say yes and no. While the game is very playable and stays true to the characters, it does lack direction and an overall vision to this new direction that the developers were willing to go with. While Mind Over Mutant was an improvement, these factors alone made so that the Crash franchise stayed dead for 8 years. The game is not good, but it's not bad either. It's just average.